What up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans? It's Shannon White, it's Matty P, it's Steelers Global Perspective, where we give you a macro perspective on all things Pittsburgh Steelers. We call it the Global Perspective because Mike Tomlin interchanges global and macro all the time. But we are kicking off our content this weekend with obviously a preview of the Steelers game against the Buffalo Bills. They had the practice against them in stadium this week, which is the first time I think since 2016 they've done a practice. The rumor is that there'll be a reciprocal one next year, which will be different from the Steelers because they don't usually go and practice against people at their homes and practice away. But it's going to be a really interesting game for the Steelers. They're a team. The Bills obviously were a team that the Steelers met last year in the preseason, and they met them in the playoffs as well. So definitely there's a lot of history there. There's obviously the William and Mary connection for Sean McDermott and Mike Tomlin, of course. But going into this game, I think it's interesting, Shannon. We obviously know that Russ is going to be there. He's being treated like the starting quarterback. I think that's a really good place to kick it off, our discussion off around what we need to see out of this game. But I know I'm really excited to see Russ. I was fine with what I saw out of Fields last week. I know there was a couple of fumbles, but to me, it was such a blow the cobwebs off game. I think it's different when there's only 3 games on the schedule when it comes to preseason. But I'm really excited to see Russ because if he can show us hopefully more than what we saw out of Fields, yeah, I'm just pumped. I just want to see it. Like, there's been all this hype. It's rubber hits the road now.
Yeah, I thought it was a very intriguing joint practice. There was, when the Steelers matched up last year, especially in the playoffs, by that point, they'd been devastated by injuries, especially at inside linebacker in different positions. But they really didn't match up talent-wise across the board. Buffalo just was the superior team. And the Steelers was going to have to play a perfect game to be competitive. Now, at the practice, pretty much everybody, the beat writers, the people that I listened to that were there said that it was, if anything, it looked to be more of an equal matchup.
Yeah, I had that
on both sides of the ball, and that many of them thought that the Steelers got the upper hand in the practice. To say that the Steelers have drastically improved their overall talent across the roster, I think it's an understatement. And as you say, starting out with the quarterback position, Russell Wilson is so experienced. He's accomplished so much in the league. He brings that leadership. He throws such a good teardrop, or he's got a good touch on these deep balls, and where he leads guys over the top and drops them in, multi-level. And that's something that the Steelers haven't been able to do since Ben was here.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to see Wilson with this offense, because we ran some play action last week, which worked beautifully. I think there was 4 completions over 20 yards.
Yep.
And we're talking about down the field throws, not a 3-yard pass that the guy runs for 20 yards. Yeah. That's something we hadn't seen in a while. And so I'm really excited to see what Wilson can do, because he's really good at hiding the ball, as we know, on play action fakes. He has the mobility that he can buy a little extra time. He can roll out. And I'm really excited to see what this offense will look like with another week, based on, I think they showed some warts last week, but they've had plenty of time and another opportunity practicing against these same guys that I expect them to be sharper on Saturday.
I think the other thing, that was interesting is that obviously the Bills sort of mentioned that Matt Milano has now hurt his bicep and is going to be out for the season, which really sucks for them.
And he's a great player. I hate that for him. Yeah.
Yeah, I hate that for him too after last year missing so much. Obviously that affects how well the Steelers offense performs. But I think it's interesting, the Steelers, how much tight end focus that we've had this offseason and after Smith offense. Then you look at the tight ends for the Bills. Now, I'm not going to sit there and try and do comparisons the Steelers can play like the Bills, because I'm always been a Dawson Knox fan, and Dalton Kincaid is a wide receiver in a tight end's body. Kyle Pitts is kind of like a tight end in a wide receiver's body a little bit the other way around. But I definitely feel like this understanding of being able to bring it in close and spread it out is really important. I think the running backs last week were a really interesting situation. And so I'm hopeful if the Steelers can run Dage and Edwards against some of the better Bills players. Obviously, he played the back end of the game last week, but Jonathan Ward's obviously got some injury woes. So as far as I'm aware, he's definitely not, in there for this week. But yeah, I'm really hopeful about Dajon Edwards because we've talked a little bit about him over the last couple, and it was really great to see him show out. And I think he's putting himself in a prime spot to be that third running back. And gosh, imagine if you finish the year with him as the third, and we've seen a little bit of him, and you've got someone that can actually spell Najee or Warren in games where the Steelers have a lead down the stretch. That could be huge for this team, especially. We've got two running backs that are, going to be, obviously Harris is off contract, then I think it's Warren the next year. So the ability to have Dajon Edwards sitting back there that allows the Steelers to make an educated decision would be incredible for what this team can do, and incredibly important down the stretch.
I think that, we got your two established, I call them co-starters, and Harris and Warren, but now you have Ward, who looked very, very good, and I don't know what his injury is or how severe it is, but hopefully it ain't going to cost him. But he's kind of like a taller Barry Foster, and he really has that speed to catch the edge on that outside zone, and he's got power. And I was really excited about it, and I was disappointed he got hurt during the end of camp there, but Edwards looked like what we thought. He's not the speed guy, but he's very similar to Warren, except that he's not the power guy. He's a jump cut guy. Because like on one of the runs, he was starting to his left, and he did a quick jump cut when he seen Frazier seal and turn his guy, and he ran right behind Frazier and up there and busted it out and almost scored a touchdown. Yeah, and that was all vision.
Yeah.
And we know that Harris, we question his vision sometimes.
Correct.
And Warren has better vision, but he's not so much of a jump cut guy as he wants to cut and go. So Edwards could give them that. And the thing about Edwards and Ward and another guy that might be listed as running back in Cordell Patterson, they've all got great special teams value.
Yeah.
Which is something in the past we haven't had in the backup running backs. So, it's really a intriguing scenario because whoever doesn't make it between Edwards and Ward, I think will be practice squad.
I think it'll be Ward. This is my tip. I think it will be Ward because one, the injury thing might come into play. Two, Ward's, I think this is his fourth year in the league as well.
Yeah.
And so I think,
but he's a really good fit for this offense, though.
Yeah, I just think with Edwards being undrafted, and a lot of people would think he was going to go somewhere between the 5th and the 7th. I think, and I think it's that, as you talk about the jump cut, I think that's a little bit out of favor at the moment amongst how NFL teams want out of their running backs. I think that factors in. But yeah, I could just see them keeping the youngest guy that they think they can mold and shape and all the rest of it. That's
Edwards looked very good, yes.
But I do agree with you that Cordell Patterson is probably going to be listed as a running back. I've mentioned that before, and some people are like, no, he's just a kick returner. I'm like, okay, well, they've got to list him somewhere, and they're not just going to list him a kick returner. It's not like a thing.
Well, I know that he didn't get to do much at camp, but the last couple of days where he was active, he ran some out of the backfield, and he did that for Arthur Smith in Atlanta last year.
Correct, yeah.
So, I mean, I expect to see him because there's a guy, if you could get him on a outside zone run, a sweep, he scored a touchdown lined up in the slot at practice, and they did the kind of like a reverse sweep, and he scored at the goal line. He's really effective because he's very elusive to be such a tall, lanky guy. He is a very good runner.
Yeah, I also think on, like, if you You're going to have to time it properly, but also on like a lot of those screen passes as well. Like there's some of those like, you know, and what particularly wide receiver screens, like, and if you play like, you know, Pat Frymuth out there, like, you know, particularly if let's say through like, you know, 2 quarters, Pat's, you know, the 4 for like 32 yards or something like that. And then you move Pat slightly into more of a wide receiver, like lining up as a wide receiver. You're going to be able to get him on that screen, or even a Darnell, right? And so they're freaking out about Darnell down the field, so they're moving the guys in the secondary. But then suddenly he's doing a screen, and Corridell's up the middle. Like this is the thing. It's the other part of the whole Arthur Smith side of things is that you know, we're now at a point where we can. It can be so creative. Whereas last year with Matt Canada, it was like, you couldn't think about these things. These things were just not possible. And with Pickett's failing over in, like, it's really upsetting to see, to be honest. But we know he's failing over the Eagles. Anyway, we're not going to talk about that. I do want to quickly say, though, speaking of quarterbacks that are no longer in Pittsburgh, I could not help but laugh to see the Mitch Trubisky pass to George Pickens. Like, son, I don't know if you saw that.
Like he's
open. Okay. But speaking of wide receivers, obviously Warren Wilson's still out.
I did want to say one more thing
about
the quarterback position. They said that, you know, beginning of camp, Justin Fields was having a few of the typical issues that they've seen in Chicago with Reed's progressions, timing. As camp went on, he improved every day. Yeah. And they said against the Bills in the joint practice that, you know, he'd been matching Russell Wilson throw for throw. But against the Bills, of course, he was probably going against second string more than, you know, Wilson going against first team. But interestingly, Wilson was with more of the second team offense from what I read on the day. So Justin had more of the first team offense with him when they were on the field. Well, but I did hear that Fields had the stronger practice, and that they was really impressed to the point that they're still saying it's a competition that everybody that Tomlin's tried his best to avoid. But if it's good to hear that from the aspect that I think Wilson should start the year and ease Fields in again in low pressure, certain packages. But it bodes well that if something was to happen to Wilson, that Fields could step in, know this offense, be prepared, and you not skip a beat. So, you know, usually if you have 2 quarterbacks or 3, you don't have one. But I think in this case, hearing that Fields is really picking up the offense and seems to be blossoming is just all good news all the way around.
Totally. And I think I don't know. I've been debating. It's too early for the conversation. It's probably one for the bye week, but I've been debating for a little while around in my own head. In an ideal world, do I want Fields to be the quarterback next year, or do I want Russ? And I'm leaning in the Russ camp right now, because I think that you can pay Russ a little bit less if let's say they win a playoff game and they otherwise look pretty good in the playoffs. You know, for Russ, it's like, come back another year. Let's go chase that Super Bowl with, you know, Cam Hayward and Minka and TJ and all of that. I think, and then, you know, after that, Steelers can figure it out. I think if with Fields, you know, you're tying up a lot of money there. You know, I think you're gonna have to pay that bit more, really, or guarantee a lot more. Or maybe you can guarantee more of the contract for Wilson, and that keeps him and what have you. But I'm just interested to see the 2 guys play. Like, I was just excited, like, a couple of the big plays that Fields made, you know, a couple of big passes. Like, there was that really good one to Pickens. There was a good one, I think it was to Jefferson last week. It was just good to see. Like, it was just like, you know what? The zip on the ball. I remember messaging you on Twitter. I'm like, gosh, at least you put some proper zip on the ball. Like, you actually feel like you got an NFL quarterback. You're not playing some, like, ring in. So I think that was really important for me. But
I think we could agree that I want it to be an obvious decision.
Yes.
Like, if it's Russ next year, it's because he played lights out this year, and they feel comfortable he has another run left in him, or that Fields just takes it. I don't want it to be, well, we're making this decision because Fields is, 8 years, 10 years younger. I want it to be because there's an obvious winner of the position, and to move forward with. So
I agree with you there. That's a really good thing. And what's an easy decision? And that's probably what we want also in these preseason games. We want to know to start the season who
yes.
Is it a clear delineation as well? Like that can change, but we should be feeling confident in that. Wide receivers are a really interesting one as well from the offense perspective this week. Obviously Roman Wilson's unable to take part. Van Jefferson looks like otherwise he's sealed up that second spot. I think Calvin Austin, is going to be huge for this team as third or fourth, interchanging with Roman Wilson. I guess with the wide receivers, we're seeing this mix of, I was trying to look for the right word there, but I was going to probably make up a word, like splattering, scattering kind of thing. But then we've obviously got the rest of it split with like Quez Watkins and Scotty Miller, and a couple of other blokes in there as well in the mix. Is there one of those other guys that you think that you're like really happy with? Because there's too many. Like a couple of the guys aren't going to make the roster. So I guess outside of obviously Pickens and Austin and Wilson and Jefferson, because I think Jefferson's a lock. Yeah. Who do you think that's the fifth wide receiver? And also, I know you and I are not going to talk about Ayuk, but let's say the Steelers got another wide receiver for whatever reason between now and the season, really. Like that makes it 6 wide receivers, and I think that's going to be hard to keep with 4 running backs and tight ends and fullback, because I think Coletto's working his way onto the roster as well. So who's buying for this 5th or 6th wide receiver position? Because I don't think there's one more like spot open.
Well, at one point I would have given the advantage to Quez Watkins because of his special teams ability. And he seems to have a connection with Russell Wilson because they've hit a lot of big plays at camp. And I think Watkins kind of reminds Wilson of Lockett. And so he really likes throwing to him, and he said so. But Watkins never carries it over to the game. And
this is what I said all. Remember, this is what I've said all offseason. I said he'll look good at training camp, look good in practice, and even look good in that preseason, that time against the Steelers. But he does not perform in season.
Yeah, you said that, and so far you've been dead on right. Like I said, the first punt, I was like, there wasn't nobody in the screen, and he fair caught the ball. I'm like, what the crap? Most guys take chances because they want to make the team, and they'll try to return something they shouldn't. Well, lo and behold, the next time, he tries to Willie Mays it over the shoulders for whatever reason, and naturally loses it in the fumble. And I'm like, well, he's gone. He's gone. He might not make it through the week. Now, in his defense, he's had a good week of camp, but he does that. So I think the edge goes to Scotty Miller. Because Scotty made 2 big catches in the game. He has that speed to get open downfield. I heard one guy that's a beat reporter talk about that he thought that Miller ran better routes and had similar speed and was more effective against the Bills in the joint practice than Calvin Austin was. And so I'm not saying that Scotty Miller is going to beat out Calvin Austin, but I'm saying that Scotty Miller might knock Watkins' practice squatter off altogether.
Yeah, and I think as well with Scotty Miller, you've heard Mike Tomlin talk about Miller more than you'd expect for the 4th to 6th option. And he's also the oldest guy in that room. And I think that carries a bit of weight. I think that carries weight in this room, Like, I think that is what it is.
And he's won a title. He's played with Tom Brady and, knows that, like some quarterbacks like Manning and Brady, they hold you, your foot to the fire, so to speak, that you're going to be where you're supposed to be or they're going to be on you.
Yeah.
And that shows a level of professionalism. Yeah. And Scotty Miller is that, and a veteran, as you say. So, yeah, I think he might have more value than Watkins because he's accomplished more in the NFL level for sure.
But but it's really nice that we've got to the second preseason game. I mean, I really wanted Wilson. I was really hopeful for Wilson through the first 3 preseason games, that being Roman. But I'm actually really pleased that we're now pretty set, that it looks like we pretty much know the 4 or 5 guys. Van Jefferson's looking better than what I think a lot of people thought. I'm thrilled because I was really high on when they brought him in. I haven't still pegged, and I think overall, eventually, he'll just be the 3rd guy. But Van Jefferson can run routes. I think he's, it's hard when people you see weight, on a profile page because weight differs a little bit. But he's about 200 pounds. He's 6'2", so he's got a bit of size. He can run the routes. He's very savvy. He's been with it, apart from his. Pardon?
He blocks.
He blocks.
Yep.
And he's also been a very, very, apart from the Atlanta time, he spent time, with Stafford over at the Rams. So he knows what to expect out of that veteran quarterback. And I think you're seeing that. So, and he knows the Arthur Smith offense, right? So, I feel like, I think as we talk about the offense coming together, and we've left tight ends down a little bit, but we kind of know what we're expecting out of those blokes. But I think I'm just starting to see the offense, all these questions answered, and when those questions answer and they get all time to be together and to progress, we're gonna see, a lot better result than what we were sort of in flux constantly last year. I'm
gonna make a prediction that when our boy Roman Wilson gets on the field and he's healthy, we're going to have a lot of discussions about Roman Wilson. I think there's going to be a lot of very excited Steeler fans when they finally get to see what he could do in this offense, because he is a very willing and able blocker. He's very savvy in his route running. He's faster than everybody thought. And he has great hands. And the dude's a straight up winner. And, one thing that I know we'll talk about it later, but Andy Weidel said yesterday in his interview that they looked for Steeler guys that fit the mold. And we can talk about the mold later, but Roman Wilson fits the mold.
And as you say, there's that fit of, look at the way Michigan played last year. That's what Steelers want to play a running back led team. They want to run the football. That's what it's going to be. So 100%. And we will get into that in our non-preview content. So let's flip it over to the defense. So defense is going to be interesting. I don't know if you've caught it, but Cam Hayward did some interviews with some players this week. And he kicked off one of them. So there's one that's got Patrick Queen, Landon Roberts. Then it's got Corey Trice and Joey Porter Jr. I've almost finished that segment. And then I don't know who he's got in the segment after because I haven't finished the video. But my gosh, that's 15 to 20 minutes of just sitting there listening to Landon Roberts and Patrick Queen just talk about anything and everything. Just beautiful. It's like I'm not the biggest fan of the movie, but people talk about Step Brothers and the movie, whatever. It's like that with those two, right? But they're just big, nasty, cranky, hard-hitting linebackers. They don't even. It's kind of funny. It was kind of almost like all the Bash Brothers from Mighty Ducks. These two blokes don't even. They're you can tell they like each other because they respect each other, but they're even a bit gruff with each other. The only thing they bond over is a hatred for running backs. Effectively, it's very, very funny. This segment, not meant to push people to other content, but people got to go listen to that. But you just get this sense between those two, and they're savvy. I still call Patrick Queen a veteran. Between these two alone, and then you throw Peyton Wilson into the mix, who had, I thought, a fantastic debut last week. I think just that first game and being asked to do a billion different things. I'm just sitting there and I don't mean to be the negative because I'm so thrilled. I'm so thrilled, with these three guys. Then the thing is, I just wish Cole Holcomb was in the mix because that would be 4 guys that the Steelers would have literally 2 sets of 2 starting caliber. You could just call them units, linebacker units, and just deploy them and just throw them at opposing teams all day. But regardless, putting the whole thing aside, I just think for Peyton Wilson, with everything that he's been through, and I know you'll jump on this point, everything he's been through and that speed, but to have that leadership in front of him, I mean, we thought it was a lot for Joey Porter to have Pat P last year, but for Wilson to have these two guys in front of him that will allow him to acclimate to the speed of when I say speed of the NFL, obviously Peyton Wilson's a freak athlete, but I mean like how quick you've got to process things, the complexities, exactly, processing. Man, I feel like we're lucky. I feel like we're cooking something here.
Yeah, I did see that. And one thing that is so impressive about Peyton Wilson, and I said this about the Steelers draft, they drafted a lot of leaders, former captains, and they didn't go for the young guys. There wasn't any 21-year-old or even early 22. They got guys that maybe played an extra year. And Beanie Bishop 2 extra years. And McCormick a couple extra years. Peyton Wilson, because of an injury, an extra year. So he's ready to play right now. He's like a second-year veteran. And if you watch Peyton Wilson, what do most guys who are super ultra aggressive and athletic in college do? They get to the pros, and in their first few games, they're hesitant. They don't take or they take a wrong read and a misstep, and not Wilson. He was 100-mile-an-hour forward on every play. The very first play of his career, he made a tackle for a loss behind the line of scrimmage where he ghost moved a lineman that was pulling, and it still had the speed and athleticism to bring down the running back. He missed a couple of tackles late in the game. He was probably tired. You're using so much adrenaline that by the second half, because he played a lot longer than he expected, that he was probably getting a little tired as his adrenaline wore off. And in coverage, I mean, there was a couple times he was running right with the wide receiver. He was in his hip pocket. One time the guy dropped the ball, but he was right on him. And when have we had a guy who could do that? So to me, that shows that he is the mental part, the processing part, the recognition part is not too big for Peyton Wilson, even though he's a rookie. And I think that these linebackers we're talking about, I would love to have Holcomb healthy. But it's going to be at least half the season, I believe, for he'll be able to come back because of the timing and the severity of his injury. But they're going to have excellent 3 deep and maybe 4, we'll see, at inside linebacker. But we got to remember they're going 5 deep and outside. Now, everybody was like, oh, Marcus Golden came back, and then, of course, he retired. I think he's seen the handwriting on the wall. I always say if you're thinking about retiring, you're retired already. But I think he come back late in camp and seen what was ahead of him. It ain't Keyshawn Johnson, but the Johnson kid that was with the Eagles.
Oh, Kyron Johnson.
Kyron, yes.
And remember when he came? Remember when I came, the week they signed him, we did a show and I said, people will sleep on Kyron Johnson. I am a big Kyron.
Well, they're not sleeping anymore because that guy is quick as a hiccup.
That's what I said, though.
He explodes around the corner. And no, he's not going to set much of an edge because he's little. But he is going to apply pressure anytime he's in there because he never stops. That's what Nick Herbig and him have in common, is that even if you initially block them, they're still moving. They're getting back there one way or the other. So that is a great quality to have. He's an excellent special teams guy. Then you got the guy that I brought up, Jeremiah Moon, who is like a young Bud Dupree. He's got the height. He's got the length. He got a sack in the game. He applied consistent pressure. Now, he's not as quick as Johnson, but he's much bigger. And he's more of a Bud Dupree pass rusher type. And so I think the Steelers go 5 deep. So they might carry 5 inside and 5 outside linebackers.
Yeah, I think.
Well, they might carry 4 actually inside.
We only need
to start and then carry the 5.
But you only have to carry 4 inside because Holcomb will be on a list. So they only need to carry 4.
They're starting out 4 and then 5 on the outside.
But I would say this, right? Don't be surprised. Well, and then they might. It depends on how many D linemen they have. But here's why, right? and we're moving a little bit away from preview. Well, actually, we're not, because I am interested to see this week. Now, what I'm about to say is,
hey, don't forget what I got to say is for you, because I think it'll go in with what you're getting ready to say. Windman, I think it's how you say his last name.
Oh, yeah.
Number 45. When he come in the game, I noticed him ever play.
Same.
I mean, he was right in there, and I was like, who is that? And I think he's out of Michigan State, maybe. I can't remember.
Yeah, I didn't know who he was.
I looked it up. But he played a very strong game. And then he had a strong week again at practice. He might just be hitting in there to where that's a guy you could put on that practice squad. In case, while you're waiting on Holcomb, in case you need to bring a guy up, there you go.
Well, and because I think Mark Robinson's looking pretty done. But what I was going to say was, I saw, and I haven't been able to get the clip since. I have not been able to find it, but I know it was in the second half last week. And also, we don't know because we're not there in the schematics. And they were moving some. They played. It was sort of. They had some weird guys. They had a weird selection of guys in the mix, but they played. To what I could see, like as well, way they set up in the play and where they moved around, and the Steelers on the call sheet actually have it as as some sort of sub package.
Are you going to say Leal?
Well, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that they played. They lined up in a 3-4 a couple of times. Sorry, at 4-3 a couple of times.
I see one play that they had Leal at inside linebacker at the snap. I do not know what was going on, but he moved.
Yeah.
He moved. I was like, what the crap?
So I kind of, the thing that got to me thinking about that 4-3 was that, like, obviously Highsmith and TJ are pretty big outside linebackers for 3-4 guys.
Yes.
Right? But the ability to put TJ or Highsmith into that front four set, or to move, because they're both athletic, one of them back, and have Peyton Wilson and Patrick Queen there with one of those guys, and still have the four defensive, like 4 guys, on the front. Particularly if you start having any level of injury, to a Benton or to a Hayward, or even, an Ogunjobi, or Leal. It just got me thinking. I was just like, this could be really, really interesting, but it's an interesting way of thinking about Wilson. But also thinking in if the Steelers, if it's 3rd and long and they really need to play, the idea to line up in that 4-3 where you've got that front, and then you've also got Highsmith and TJ there, or you've got a Landon next to Peyton on one side, and whether it's Highsmith or Watt, in the other, probably Watt because he's more athletic, next to Wilson. And then they're thinking they're going to rush, TJ's going to rush from that side, so they throw it that way. But instead, it's Alandon Roberts that comes down, and TJ's making a leap, an interception, or batting a pass. I just looked at it and I went, ooh, because like Peyton Wilson was in the mix of this. And as I say, it could have been a form of sub package, that because it was the particular player, Mark Robinson, had Peyton Wilson, and I couldn't get the full name on the jersey of the other guy, and I couldn't get the full number, but I think it was the guy that was wearing 37. So I think it was technically someone else in there playing into that backer spot. It was quite late in the game. But I think they were more trialing. It looked to me when I saw the play, because I saw Peyton Wilson telling Mark Robinson what to do. I kind of felt like it was more, they wanted to see a play where there were certain guys in that, and it looked like it was, how was Peyton Wilson going to respond in that? But you and I have talked about the whole Luke Kuechly thing and the rest of that, that background with Peyton Wilson. So for me, when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So I guess I'm interested to see in the game, but for me, tomorrow, whether we see any more 4-3, because again, Leal is a really interesting sort of guy if you want to play a 4-3.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's better suited for a 4-3.
Yeah,
and he has looked like, I mean, like I said, I'm shocked. I thought Leal and Loudermilk, one of the two was gone. And Leal is now giving me hope that they could have a young core, another young player to put with Benton, and hope that Lee by next year can really contribute. And then you get you a draft pick or two, and yeah, you're set. But Loudermilk, different people are saying that he has had. He's penetrated. He's using that size and that power because he's not quick, but then he is imposing his will and getting penetration. Loudermilk is not a lost cause. That he can figure out a way to sneak in there.
Do you know he looks trimmer?
Again, another guy.
He looks trimmer this year.
Yeah, and another guy that I was, had written off was Montravius Adams. And I'm like, who's this guy? Where's he been the last few years? I mean, if he can back up and have another strong preseason game on Saturday, hey, you got to say, hey, something happened. A light flicked on, something happened. Because we know there's the 3 years in the Steelers system. That third year for defensive lineman's a big year. So maybe that's it.
Well, I mean, they did pay him. I was surprised how much they paid him, like, in the offseason. So, yeah, I mean, it could be really interesting. There could be an interesting headache with Ogunjobi, particularly if they make other moves, right? Like, we're not going to get into the IU thing, but, like, there's a lot of dead cap money there, but, like, $5 million here or there can be very helpful. When
we haven't seen Ogunjobi or Hayward or even heard about him this camp. I haven't.
He was on with the Bills practice.
But you hear about these other guys?
Half an hour. He played about half an hour apparently, and then took his gear off. So, but we'll quickly talk about the secondary, and I want to get to a couple of quick predictions to wrap up this sort of preview for the game. So, in the secondary as well, I think it's, to be honest, like I've seen a lot of different takes and commentary and conclusions about last week. I think it's such a pinch of salt for the secondary in the first game and the last game of the preseason. Like the last game, you're looking at guys that are trying to make that roster, but that first game, I mean, there were guys that were out, like Minka, wasn't playing. It was you're playing a different. You're playing, the offense from the other team is either super creative or super vanilla. I try not to read too much into it, to be honest. Apart from the fact I thought, and you and I will talk about him outside the content we'll release, not to do with previewing the game. Apart from the fact I love what I saw from Bishop, the rest of it, I kind of it's good, but again, I guess my point is I'm not reading too much into it. But maybe you might think differently than I do.
Well, I have to acknowledge Corey Trice. I mean, a guy who, before he ever even got to really make a mark last year, play in a preseason game or anything, is out for the year. But we'd hoped that now that both knees have been surgically repaired, that might be what was holding him back, and he can. So he's had a good camp, and then when he come in, he immediately made a tackle for a loss, and he looked very. It was a good forward tackle. He broke down well. I thought in coverage he had good coverage. I think he was wasn't as aggressive as I think he will eventually be, like he was at Purdue. But I think he was just trying to make sure to make a good first impression. But I'm really happy for him. I think Joey Porter looked like Joey Porter. We haven't got to see Dante Jackson yet.
Oh, but by the way, I will say with Porter, that was definitely a penalty on him. I was watching.
Yeah, he had a hold of him. Yeah, it was hands on. Yeah.
And someone was like, "Oh, Porter," and there was. Well, I think one of the commentators debated. And I'm like, "Mate, that's
a penalty." Yeah, because he had a hold of him right here.
Oh yeah,
yeah. He wasn't gonna let him get going. Yeah,
but I was also like,
that's how he does.
But I said something, and I remember my wife in the background said to me, "Oh, what happened there?" And I was like, "Oh, it's just like really clear penalty." But I was like, you know what? I'm happy for Joey Porter to do it in a preseason game, as long as he doesn't do it in the full season. Like, so what? Like, move on.
Some crews will let you get away with more than others. So
that was pretty clear though.
Yeah, but that one was just this. I agree, but they're saying Dante Jackson's back, and he's looked really good. But Corey Trice, I think, took over the outside backup. If he can stay healthy, he's been more consistent than Rush. Now, Rush has also had some bright moments, but I think Rush might be the backup on the other side.
Yeah.
But I've been really happy to see Beanie Bishop get run work in the slot and on the outside.
Yeah.
Because he is more experienced on the outside. And so many times you'll hear about, when they're going 7-on-7 or 11-on-11, that Bishop broke up a play and he was covering Jefferson or he was covering Pickens. And, guys, he gives up height and length to, but he's a battler. And I've said that all along. He can give you snaps wherever you need him.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. So I guess going to this game, I want to ask you the straight question. One, do you think the Steelers are going to win the game? And I know that might be less important than it's about how they play.
It just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Remember that chant, guys. Okay.
Just tell me, do you think they're going to win or not?
I believe they win this week.
Do you? I'm actually. You know what? We're going to do a bit of like the football in 2 minute drill. All right. I'm going to ask you some quick fire questions to do something prediction different. And we're going to do it this way. This is going to be a bit different, a bit more fun. We'll do the same thing next week. So, okay. So I'll ask you. Do they score more than 20 points?
Yes.
Do they allow more than 20 points?
Yes.
Do they score more than 3 passing touchdowns?
Passing,
yeah.
No.
Okay, interesting. Over, do they score more than 2 passing touchdowns?
No, I think it'll be 2.
Maybe 2. Do they let in more than 2 rushing touchdowns?
No.
Love that. Over and under Jeremiah Moon, 1 sack.
It's hard when you don't know who he's going to be going against, and I'm not sure, down the line on there. But they give up a lot of sacks last week, the Bills.
Yeah.
So
they gave up a lot of sacks last year too.
Yeah, I'm going to say he'll get 1 sack.
I love it. Beanie Bishop, does he make a turnover causing play? Whether that's a forced fumble, interception, a tackle for a loss that ends the drive. Does he? Oh, rather than turnover, does he make a splash play that puts him on every Steel fan's radar?
Splash play, yes. Turnover, no.
Like it. Peyton Wilson, over under 1 sack.
I think he'll be used more in coverage, so I don't think sack.
Fair enough. Over or under Liao, 2 tackles for a loss.
Under.
Justin Fields, over or under 125 yards passing.
I'll say under.
Over or under the tight end group, someone in the tight end group scores a touchdown.
Over, or I think they will, yes.
And final one, over or under. Over or under Najee Harris, 10-yard plus run.
Yes, over.
There you go. I like it. There you go. A different way to do some predictions.
Yes. It's harder in the preseason.
Yeah,
but,
it is.
But I know they're talking about, they might give Wilson, say, 3 series or a little into the second quarter because, he didn't get to play last week. And so, you don't know who's going to be playing where. But, yeah, I feel pretty comfortable with that. So.
And I actually think Wilson's going to do I think they're going to run the ball a lot with Wilson on the field, as funny as that says. Like, I think they're going to want to see that cohesion, like, in those. And it's going to be heavily scripted. I don't think it's going to be like with Fields, like, you need to really play what's in front of you and we're testing your ability to make decisions with that offense. I think with Wilson, it's like, how does this work with you here, with these key players around you? Like that's what it's going to be, from my opinion. Well, that's going to wrap up this preview of the Steelers global perspective ahead of the Bills game. We hope you enjoy the game. It's going to be really interesting from our perspective to sort of see how the Steelers continue to develop. particularly after their 20-12 loss last week against the Houston Texans. As always, go